Not at the at the rate we were going.
Well, you know what? The price of fabulousness. I actually feel like with the beginning, like the epigraph that she offers, which is a really long epigraph,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of suggests that her politic has definitely grown.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder why she made that editorial decision. Like, why do that like several page epigraph, italicized and mention, your friendships and your convening with them, and not just kind of like update the essay,
Right.
like that choice,
Mm-hmm.
because it does feel like in the essay she's sort of leaning towards, I mean, the point that she's making in The Price of Fabulousness is that like acknowledging that respectability politics has gotten people to some place.
Yeah.
It's gotten a subset, but what have they had to sacrifice in order for it to work for them?
Right.
And is it worth the price
Mm-hmm.
of the, and and then it becomes like it loses its meaning, it loses its value because you had to give so much in order to attain it. And it's not even like a one time, okay, well, I can buy a silk blouse to wear to my job interview and get the job. It's like, no, you have to constantly try, and you
Right.
never know
Right.
when you are going to reap benefits from respectability politics. So what are we holding on to?
Financial. Mm-hmm.
So I got the point she was making. I just thought the epigraph was a very interesting, and maybe I was reading it because I was like speed reading it before we sat down for
Yeah,
this.
I was just like partially reading it. And so I'm like, I was like probably a page and a half to finishing it before we got on. And I was like, where's this going? And because I was trying to figure out the connection. So you just pulled it together. But
Well, hello everyone. SBG Book Club is officially a nonprofit as of today. Shout
woohoo!
out to us. Don't donate today because I need to go in and update the EIN and everything. But we're gonna do a donation push because
Right.
every other day when my accountant emails me, I'm like, yeah, I know the book club costs a lot of money, but
Mm-hmm.
we want to keep it running, so we're gonna have to do some funding.
Yes, yes.
But here we are for part 4. Oh, I hope my mic is, yeah, my mic is still working. Part 4. I want my ear to like open up.
Oh,
This is like the
drain
worst.
it. Oh, I need to close.
But in the meantime, in between time, what you can do is get the fabulous syllabus that we have produced. Dr. Walker did an amazing job on this, and Raquel, who's been doing our current iteration of the syllabi, has just the design. I mean, it's just so pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
And I think what I want to do though, maybe some point at midpoint in July, I know we're getting into the next book after this, but I want to do I want to do like a Zoom call or something maybe
Mm-hmm.
with the whole crew, like the whole community of people that have read thick, and just get everyone, because I think there's so much about, black womanhood and so many aspects of our identity that Dr. Tressie taps into, that I definitely want to get the perspective of the reading community on this.
Right. Yeah.
I want to hear from the people.
I would like that. That would be
I got to figure out how we're going to do it. Everything costs time and money.
nice.
Everything.
Yes, because if you want to unlock those features in Zoom, you do have to pay.
Yeah, I mean, I paid because I have a Patreon, so we did it. But it's like, okay, what can we commit to? What can we
Mm-hmm.
do? But let's get into this. All right,
Yes.
so we already kind of talked about the price of fabulousness, and there weren't really that many questions in the syllabus about it.
Mm-hmm. No.
Um, The author uses this chapter to address the responsibility that comes with the ability to use one's status to help others navigate systems that don't usually work for them. She first learned this lesson from her mother, who was formally educated and spoke the King's English and dressed well. And so, to what extent had fixing your feet worked for Vivian when she had to help her neighbor?
Yeah.
The Vivian, who is her mother.
I think that's so funny that she called her mother the Vivian. I
She has
mean,
she has 2 new books coming out, and one of them is going to be about her mom. It's going to
oh,
be about the Vivian. Yeah, I got
oh,
sent on her Substack the
nice,
other day.
nice. Yeah, no, I think that it worked quite well. But again, like to your earlier point in how she kind of works her way around, she obviously sees how it is sort of based on the perception of the person who was at the welfare office, or I think that's where she went, to sort some things out. And so it's always a gamble when you are, when it's someone else's perspective that determines how that interaction is going to go.
Mm. Yeah, I mean the example that she even gave about her mother helping the neighbor was so quick, because it was like, I think in the essay that Dr. Tressie is making the example that, like, because they make like it's not like, oh, my family is better than everyone else. It's that
Mm-hmm.
my family paid a particular cost in a different manner, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
goes back to our point about how Black folks are even consumers, in this idea that a Black person can consume properly versus other people consume poorly, which is just a function of classism, right? That we even think that her family had, by whose ever account, had purchased properly, and so they had some slight needs to be of assistance, but what was the price they paid to even have those very menial means?
Right.
In her observation of somebody coming back a paraplegic, and so getting higher disability with
Right.
restorative rights, and then if someone had paid the right amount for their what is it, life insurance, they could get a gym
Mm-hmm.
welfare home. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and really, like, with Black people, we do hold on to like these material vestiges, and they take so much from us.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it costs so much. So,
Yeah.
like, yeah, the Vivian is helping other people. I mean, she's clearly proud of her mom, because every reference to her mother throughout this entire book is very, what's the word? Very state,
Reverence. She's
very,
very
yeah, a lot of reverence
reverent. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to even the Vivian.
She has a formal name. I mean, how reverent can
Are we
you
all gonna start, calling our mothers the Trisha?
like
Have
just
me at J.C.
not
Penney's.
of Vivian, not of whatever.
Oh, no, 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 not the Handmaid Tales. The that and I love that. You almost want to kind of laugh at it, right? The idea that she really reveres her mother for quite mundane actions, but
Mm-hmm.
like, I love that, because I think we often want to create state somebody as deserving of high levels of respectability because they
Mm-hmm.
have done something extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, baby.
You just made
Surviving
it through the day, and that was good enough.
surviving as a Black woman in this country, like,
Okay.
that is magical.
A
That
feat.
is amazing. The next question is, does this chapter also wrestle with the question of what kind of Black are you?
Mm.
Well, we're following up to 2 chapters that
Yeah.
kind of break down the Black is over, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to know your whites.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that she is trying to think about how Black folks navigate, the knowledge of knowing that, you know, respectability in some ways does provide protection. And then there's also the precariousness of it that I think some of us are aware of. I think many of us are trying to, you know, um, but I guess to that question, what kind of like how do you interpret that?
I mean, but well, she talks about, even within her own, like, how respectability politics have benefited herself,
Mhm.
about the type of Black that she is perceived as, right? And how
Yeah.
that has changed throughout her lifetime, right? Where she went from being the problem to, was it what she went from being the problem to causing the problem, or do I have that flipped? Right? Where she talks about the problem.
I think that's it.
And then, getting to this where she is talking about, well, or is it a previous chapter where she's even talking about going to Emory, right? And well, that's
Right.
Black is
Oh,
Over, where she talks about, ethnic Blacks versus
right. Yes.
African Americans, and then coming into this and noting that like she has become a woman of privilege, and
Hmm.
that because people perceive her a certain way, they respond to her differently,
Hmm.
even though she knows a lot of women who share a very similar identity or phenotype to her do not get to access these same privileges.
Right.
And that there's a special kind of mix that has landed her in the space she's, so it's like this awareness of, right,
Right.
I get to be this bad bougie bitch in this
Mhm.
space, but many of Black women who have similar identities to me would be left out and would
Right.
face much more harm than I face. So she kind of notes her privilege, but I think she also constantly refrains that it can't be replicated, right? And
Right.
the cost and the sacrifice that allowed her to get to that space is not something that's accessible to the broader
Mhm.
community of even Black women. um and that she doesn't look, and she's conscious not to look at it as though she can distinguish herself from other Black people,
Right.
because she realizes the exceptionalism
Yeah. Because I think
that
it's
she
like
is
yeah, it's a formula. It's not a formula that will work every single time, right? It's something that, I mean, there's a little bit of effort and luck and just a mixture of all kinds of things thrown in there that makes it work. And so that awareness of, look, this is, where I'm at, but this by no means is something that we need to pretend that you can do steps 1 through 5 and you'll get the same result. So, yeah.
Hmm. Have you ever used your access to
Mm-hmm.
resources, material or image based, to show up for others, and how did it make you feel to do so?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, word to Dr. Collins, the system will constantly replicate these hierarchies to like harm
Mm-hmm.
us. And I mean, this is something that I even grappled with, in that I made the conscious effort that I wanted to try to elevate my socioeconomic class, and that I wanted to gain access to a higher class of Black people. And I did that. I got the access. And then I just realized, like, you realize the cost. You
Mm-hmm.
realize what it takes to get there. And it's like, this entire like system is built on who can be kept out,
Right.
that there is no way to make this accessible. There is no way for me to turn around and say, here's how you replicate what I did in order to gain this access. Because
Mm-hmm.
I got in and I realized, I got to fight to be here myself.
Yes.
Like,
Yes. It's the precarity. I think about this. I'm not. I'm trying not to tell my brother business, but I remember us having. I mean, we had some hardships in our family over COVID, and I remember like trying to give my brother like financial advice and being like, oh, like what if you do this or what if you all do that with childcare or something like that. And then I don't know where I got this from or who was saying this, but I just remember it being said to me, like, you can't budget your way out of poverty. And
mm,
I remember just telling my mom, like, because I was telling my mom, like, I really feel like I should help my brother out. And she was telling me, like, if you know you have the means to help your brother, then why are you going back and forth and hemming and hawing and trying to give him like financial advice when you just have the money? She was like, do you know how many white people just give money to their families? Like if they're in a,
yes.
and that is how they sustain wealth. Like it's not just because, they're, so, and it just made me realize like, it's not like he needs more resources. So, um, and it just made me really think about even just at my own job, how we counsel students who don't have money, like, and we try to tell them like, oh, did you get a scholarship and did you get good grades and like all of these like things that we tell us do, or did you save your refund check, and we try to give them that advice, but it's like, no, they just need more money, and that's just the reality.
Yeah. The book club needs money.
All roads lead
Give
back to
donations. Give donations. Give donations.
absolutely, yeah. So
It is, and it's like we constantly find ourselves in so many different scenarios where we turn back and we try to fix a systemic issue by admonishing the individual and
Yeah.
telling the individual to like bend and fix itself,
Yeah.
fix
Yeah.
your feet, essentially,
Exactly. Right.
in a system that that functions on keeping us out.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
that is the price of fabulousness.
We have a comment. I think it was, it's, I don't know if there was something else before that, but it's not sustainable why most Black families can't sustain wealth or assets to pass down to the next generation is not doing so well. Yeah, and I remember just even with Brittany Cooper talking about this in Eloquent Rage, where she was talking about how like she sends money back home, and like being middle class is not simply stable for a lot of Black women, Black families. There's always, and I even think in Sister Citizen by Melissa Harris Perry, like she talks about like you have a proximity to working class that a lot of people don't have. And so even if you are comfortable, there's still somebody, in your family that will put that at any moment can push you and strain your finances as well. So I think that, that's starting to come up in this chapter as well.
Yep.
Comment. That has been my experience as a low income college student. I have access to more individual wealth because of scholarships that my family has never had, and trying to afford myself and help them is so hard. And I had to tell my supervisor that the other day. I was like, we're trying to put all these restrictions on how somebody can use money. I was like, do you realize that some students work and send money home? And that was the first time it was like they didn't, that was the first time they were hearing that. They were like, and then they kind of try to push back and be like, well, that's not what they're supposed to be doing. I'm like, you can't give somebody money and tell them how to use it. You just can't do that. I mean, you could, but it's not ethical to do that to me. So, and it was just shocking. I'm like, you've been in this game longer than I have, but there was just a disconnect between like a student being able to like get money and that they would actually use it. He thinks everybody's like, oh, you just get your refund check and you just balling out. And it's like, do you know what kind of economy we are in? So, yeah. I get really fired up about financial aid.
No, I was thinking about your comment and how you were like talking about Dr. Cooper, and even to the point about like the comment that Aaliyah that you just put on the screen. Dr. Cooper was talking about how she got to be the respectable Black girl in the church.
Yeah.
And how she was celebrated and uplifted by people in her church, but like other Black girls did not get that same celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And that her ability to be seen as the right kind of like, I guess, problem, or to be able to fix her feet in the way that Dr. Cotton talks about. Cotton. How do you say it? I gotta like look up some interviews so I always feel like I'm garbling it because I want to say cotton and it's cotton.
Yeah. Maybe it's like Kodum.
Maybe. I can't speak English, so there's that.
Because it does look like cotton, but it might.
I should look it up some. And I heard her in Kiese Layman, which is why my book is autographed. And how I ended up getting Kiese for the author chat last year.
Mm-hmm.
I went to an event at UNC in Raleigh, in Chapel Hill, not Raleigh, Chapel Hill, and I still don't remember how they said her last name. That's crazy. I need help.
Maybe one day she'll magically appear at one of our events. We're gonna conjure her.
I'm thinking about like trying to like backtrack and see if like we need to get funding. That's really what it is, because it's like the the quagmire that Black women academics tend to be very, very busy. They're doing 50 million things. So like it's easier, like the Black men, we've only read 2 books by Black men, right? Kiese, who was like, yeah, he just runs himself thin. And then we are reading another book in August.
Okay.
And that's been booked since February. Like that was like a, hey, can we get you? And they were like, yeah.
Yeah.
No problem. The women, it's just been like, and it's not to say that women are more difficult, but like they're just, working in a different paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been also like, trying to get Dr. Hortense Spillers. That's a big lift. But I'm gonna try again, and then we're trying to get to Dia Hartman because we actually the syllabus for Wayward Life is already up for sale, but we're gonna try to get to Dia.
I hope that would be cool. I
But in
really
August, we are reading Robert Jones, if y'all want to know. And so he is doing an author chat with us. We're reading The Prophets in
he's
August.
cool. I saw a author chat. Oh yeah, we did have. Oh yeah, because we had a black man reading come, and
Yeah,
he did live with Robert Jones,
right.
and I watched that, and I was like, oh, I like him. I'm excited
Now that
to.
I think of it, good thing I mentioned that because now I'm like, oh, when we do the live discussions, I need to bring in Black queer people. So let me book
Mhm.
that now. See, adding to the to-do list. Okay.
Right. Yes.
All right, let's get into this. So the next chapter is Black Girlhood Interrupted. Um, Dr. Tressie begins this chapter with a quote from Ruth Nicole Brown. Black girlhood studies is about the representations, memories, and lived experiences of being and becoming in a body marked as youthful, Black, and female. Black girlhood is not dependent then on age, physical maturity, or any essential category of identity. Shake the table, sis. How
Mhm.
are Black women's bodies marked as youthful in this text, or specifically in this chapter?
Mhm.
Yeah, so in this chapter, Dr. Tressie really she kind of alludes to her own body, right? And the way men in her own family, right? And this has been an ongoing conversation that I think is starting to come up a little bit more now about like we could talk about this idea of like sexual assault and rape from strangers, but
Mhm.
oftentimes we experience this from people we know.
Yes.
And there's in the Black community the how this idea that like things got swept under the rug until the funeral. Oh my gosh, I was watching the Joe Budden and Kevin Samuels interview.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, ugh, and they make this comment about like, yeah, our grandmothers and grandfathers stayed married, even though
Oh,
you find out
geez.
he had a whole other family and was touched little
Oh,
girl at the funeral. And it's like, y'all accept abuse because it wasn't found out until the funeral. I mean, yeah, Joe Budden does accept abuse,
mhm.
but like this idea that bad things happen, and because blood is thicker than water, you don't discuss
Mhm.
the bad things that are happening. And
Yeah.
instead, you go back to this theme that she started the book off with, you fix your feet, right?
Mhm.
When you start, even though you're 13, because you now have more curves and your body
Mhm.
starting to become what is identified as more womanly, it doesn't matter that you are still the age of a child. You need to correct yourself
Right.
as to not be the problem. You need to fix yourself.
Yep.
Right. And yeah, like the comment Rashida is saying, a girl is not safe in a family of men, and it's sad. I mean, I don't
Mhm.
necessarily want to pathologize all men, but it is like we have to rid ourselves of this expectation that the children need to be the respectable ones versus the adults.
Mhm.
And if you have whether man or woman in your household, word to bell hooks and
Yeah.
all about love and justice for children, that person should be removed, not that the child needs to correct themselves
Right.
to
Yep.
not have harm placed on them.
Mhm. Absolutely.
When do these bodies transition from youthful to useful and grown?
Yeah, I think that she, talks about like how it's whenever the quote in there was like whenever someone thinks that you're ready, right? That came up a lot is whenever somebody arbitrarily feels that you are now grown, that is when you become grown. And that could be at 5, 14, like it could be at any point. And so I think that's what she's pointed out is that, um, there are arbiters of black girls and black girls are not a part of that conversation.
Hmm. And I think that also connects back to the chapter on beauty when she was talking about how this is why she understood Leslie Jones and the joke that she was making on SNL about seeing
Mhm.
herself as a utility,
Mm,
because beauty is a white standard that is about othering blackness.
yes, yeah.
And so rather than invest in the standard of beauty, she invested in her utility. And this connects to like how are young Black girls even told that like, oh, you become a woman is about your
Mhm.
who can access your body, who can find usefulness with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
How might we consider here we might okay, so the question is what are the limits of Black women's stories? And it suggested that we consider the limitations placed on Black women's stories of intraracial violence and abuse.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, she talks about, black women, black girls not being believed. And I mean, even that one part about how I think her uncle said something to her about her husband. And if her husband ever beat her, like, he wouldn't believe her automatically because there's always two sides to a story. And like she
Mhm.
talked about like, where did this come from? Like, but like, and that sort of hurt that she felt. I think she also talked about a cousin, but that was related to something else. But just like having that moment of realizing that your own blood, when you talk about like earlier, blood is thicker than water, but that doesn't always apply to Black girls, right? Like we would hold or suspend, I guess, our support if it is a Black girl, Black woman, because we're set up to believe that women lie, and like, so yeah. Oh, it was her father. Okay, yeah, yeah. Even worse. Jesus, you the person who, is responsible for your life is saying, I would not believe you. I would have to consider both. There are two sides, and that's on page 184.
Yeah. When I was listening to this book on Audible, I was just like, damn.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so real though, that like but especially like men, can I even gender this, right? Is it simply that men will always take men's word? But that it's not uncommon. When I think about my mom when she met my ex was like, oh yeah, no, I totally believe whatever you're saying because
Mm.
my daughter is so high strung. And it's like,
Oh goodness.
think of the fuck? Like,
Right.
what is wrong with you?
Like, were you there? No. You know me, but you were not there. So.
Um Black girl. So the quote from 184 is Black girlhood ends whenever a man says it ends. Oh
Mm-hmm.
man, and that does go back to how we like victimize the victim. Oh, what does she have on?
Yeah.
Oh, these little Black girls are too fast. Even how we like admonish young Black boys to don't be hanging out with none of them fast girls.
Mm-hmm.
Does the author offer us any insight in previous chapters as to how this process develops? How and why do people buy into these ideas about Black women and girls? It is the Moynihan Report. It is the white supremacist language that is embedded in American grammar. We just finished Mama's Baby, Papa's Maybe. 575 of y'all downloaded the Insider syllabus. I don't know why, because there's only 100 and something insiders. So I don't know what's happening there.
Does it count like people who
It counts the
downloaded?
amount of downloads. I can see the IP address. I just haven't looked at. I have to like log into something extra to see the IP addresses. I don't know if I'm that invested in figuring it out. But Mama's Baby, Papa's Maybe has been one of our most popular. So All About Love was our most popular exploration track, and Mama's Baby, Papa's Maybe is the second most popular. But
Wow.
it is an incredibly difficult text to get through. So I
Mm-hmm.
think people were just finding out about the book club who are in school and had to read it in the
Yeah.
classroom and then purchasing the syllabus from us.
Yeah, because it's a tough one. I remember reading it in grad school, and I would have definitely benefited from having a book club at that
Yes.
time. So,
We actually sold out of I have one syllabus left from that
okay.
reading, but
Yeah.
yeah. How do structures fail Black women and girls, and how have communities failed them? And what counter
Mhm.
narratives have worked in service of denying Black women and girls protection?
Oh, I mean, I like that. This was really interesting, that part at the end where she even talks about how, the process of examining a, survivor or victim of domestic abuse and seeing like how we don't even like there's no protocol for looking at darker skin that's been like bruised. And so like, it doesn't show up on darker skin. And therefore, if you can't visibly see it, or another example is if
That's like
it,
Jordan L. Hurston. What's the book?
Mhm,
Their Eyes Were Watching God.
mhm.
And they would like get a light skinned wife because when you can beat her, you can see it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so, that to me is like, how those structures fail. It's like you have these sort of things that's supposed to be kind of foolproof or medically whatever. And somehow they're not designed it says for Black women, a camera designed not to see our abuse becomes a protocol that will only label such spots dark. And that's on page 187. And so that also creates this thing where it's like the burden of proof is on Black women to prove that she's been abused. And so, like, what other ways, and think about how complicated it becomes to then, prove your case if the most visible thing and the most readily apparent thing can't be proven by something like software or hardware.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. Okay, we're making good time. We're
we
doing it.
are,
And we're
yep.
not I don't feel like we're speeding through. Y'all can let us know, are we going too fast?
Yeah,
Are we going too fast?
I don't feel rushed today, but I'm also like,
The first discussion we did, I was trying to like but we definitely have to do like the community. I think we're gonna do like maybe a midsummer check-in.
that's
Because I
cool.
feel like we've read some really great books in the book club, and because it's been harder to get the authors for author chats, we don't have like that moment of like, this is why that book was so great.
Hmm.
So maybe we'll just find a way to do it amongst each other.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because I think this is like, I know some people were like, "Oh, I don't want to be triggered." I don't know. I don't want to. Maybe I have a bias that's blocking me, but I think you could just skip "Girl Interrupted."
And maybe there was one other one that maybe put it.
Dying to be incompetent if you're going to be triggered by
So about two chapters.
miscarriages.
Yeah, I mean, I ain't gonna lie. That one was kind of hard. Black Girl Interrupted was hard, and it wasn't any new information. It was just that I don't know. I mean, especially that part where I was like, damn, the cameras don't pick it up. Like,
But I like that it expands our language. I like, because she is an academic, but she also is like very lettered on social media. She's very active on social media. If y'all like this book, at us and her. Let folks know the work we doing. But um, so like she gets the colloquial language, right? She gets the how to talk to people that are active on Instagram and Twitter. And like when Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost and Joe Morgan makes the sort of complaint that like the Black feminist of the 60s and
Mhm.
70s, she's like, y'all my sisters, but
Right.
y'all not my sisters.
Yes, yes.
Because like sometimes I'm reading it and I just don't know what the hell you saying.
Right.
To be
It's like
honest,
this is too high theory for me. That stuff, like, it bothers me. And it's like, we want to be down, we want to be like with the folks, but it's like, do you really want to be with the folks? Because I'm not feeling like this when you're citing like these German philosophers and
everyone quotes Foucault. Now I gotta go read that man.
uh,
Even Trusty
yeah,
Doctor. There's a quote from Foucault in this
mhm,
book.
yeah, everybody, Butler, Foucault, Heidegger. I took a lot of American studies, so that's all they do is talk about white, German,
Oh
French
man,
philosophers. So
man.
it's rough.
I think she makes the theory palatable. I think she makes like, she really brings you into the conversation. And I really think this is a great book because it makes, even if you're not familiar with some of the terms she used, and we cover a lot of that in the syllabus, which is why you should get the book and the syllabus because we thought about you.
Hmm.
We thought about you. All right. We know everyone doesn't know what neoliberal is. We thought about you. And
Yep.
we break some down, some of the academic terms she does use, we break them down in the syllabus.
But
But
it's
like,
sprinkle, and she doesn't beat you with it. It's like if you're curious, you can go into it, but then if you're not so curious, you can still keep going. And so I never felt, at least, personally, I didn't feel like if there was something I didn't understand, I had to like stop and like the world was over. Like
Yeah.
I think
I mean, well, she goes on and she explains it in the following paragraphs. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes you might get caught up in your own mind feeling like, oh, you're missing out on something because you don't necessarily understand the word. But if
Right.
she uses a complex word that identifies a social theory, she explains
Mhm. Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So, I absolutely think this is a great book y'all should get. Somebody said anytime you have to bring in philosophy, it's rough in general, though. But
It is.
trust me on this, though. Trust me on this. Get the Audible. Get the audiobook version of this and let Tressie read to you. Let Dr. Tressie read to you. Because even her tonation is very like, hey, girl, hey. And
Yeah.
yeah, we just read Dr. Spiller's. I mean, even the book we read, Freshwater by Ikweke Imizi, that was not an easy book. And I
Mhm.
absolutely understand why people had a hard time. I love that book though. Maybe I just like hard books. I loved Freshwater. But this is not even Toni Morrison is complicated.
Mhm.
This book is very, very, very accessible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
I did the audiobook version and had the physical copy and I read it in tangent because I've been having a hard time mentally. And
mhm.
so, reading it in tangent has really helped me to absorb and the syllabus. I think Dr. Walker did an amazing job
Yeah.
on the syllabus. I mean, I did edit it. But I'm saying what I mean is
Not for you.
I don't get paid for the work I do, but I did do the edits for this.
Yes. And I think it's
Um,
funny. Like this girl six cackle. I just cackled the whole way through. I thought that was the funniest chapter.
and then it closes out on that chapter.
Yeah. And so you're like, oh, okay, like
Like I'm with the shits. I
right.
really feel like this is I'm a with the shits book, and I feel
Right.
like
Yeah.
I should read it.
Right. I definitely feel like I like that she kind of this is okay, so this is how I felt about hood feminism. Felt a little bit like a beat down.
That was like when
Like,
I asked people last year what book did they like the least. But
it was
Nikki Kendall isn't. Let's like she. You know what happens? This is what happens. This is what happens. When do we want to be told about ourselves?
right. So it was one of
Maybe Kevin
those.
Samuels is a little right. No, he's not. But he's always harping on the idea that Black women do not want to be criticized. And it's like, I mean, critique is uncomfortable for everyone. I
Yeah,
just don't want to be critiqued by outside the community, and
yes. But
especially now that we're trying to kill me.
I think the point I'm trying to make is I appreciate it. It was a necessary read. But I think this one is like, but I'm here with you making these same things or thinking
Like
these.
it's hard for me too, sis. This is a call out. So did her
Yeah.
feminism not feel like a call out? Like Mickey wasn't. Mickey was calling out herself though.
I just
But
didn't feel that. So like, and sometimes I did skip. So I will admittedly, but I was just like, I feel like because even the whole Amazon, like Tracy talks about, like I'm trying to hide my damn Amazon boxes. Like that was funny. I was like, me too. I'm not too. And
I just sent somebody a book via Amazon because it was $10 more expensive on Bookshop. Like
right.
we tried, but
And so you just gotta appreciate moments where I feel like a lot of Black feminists, like even like Adrienne Marie Brown, like Charlene Carruthers, like folks like that, I really appreciate them being like, girl, we do not have it figured out. And there are some things that I still like, I have these politics, and then I still just ordered something from Amazon yesterday. Like that, like
what
that's
did you order from Amazon, Dr. Denisha?
I'm not gonna get into all of that.
Exactly. I got a book because the next
It wasn't good
we
though.
have an author chat for the next book we're reading, but I will be traveling.
Uh-huh. Wait.
But The Other Black Girls, our next book.
Oh, okay.
And we have an author chat, but I'm going to be out of town.
Oh,
And so we're bringing in Princess Weeks.
okay. I don't know who that is.
She's a YouTuber. She's a really popular YouTuber. She's quite popular,
Really?
actually.
Okay.
And she like works with PBS and
Oh,
does Is it PBS? Or let me not get to lying. Princess might be watching this. Whatever. And she does like social commentary on media and film. And I wanted to, because the next book we're reading is like a racial horror story. It's like Jordan.
Okay.
But I wanted someone with like her background to be able to sit down. So I had to send her the book, but I needed to send it expeditiously.
Yes. So you had to send it that 2-day prime. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think it's, I'm trying to figure out, because like hood feminism to me, I didn't dislike the book at all, right? But it is very much so like it just feels very familiar. Like, girl, I know. That's like, I kind of read it like, yeah, you're right.
I don't know. It was just a vibe. And maybe I was in a different space. I didn't want to be talked to. We was in the middle of the pandemic. I was like, listen, I want to be talking about myself. Okay.
She really rides for the poor Black folk. She called us out on our classism.
She did. And you know,
book. But I was a little, when we got to the end of the year, people were like, what was your least favorite? Hood feminism. I'm like, damn. I love this stuff.
I mean, the one thing I could appreciate, and this, I remember random things about it, like when she talks about how soda is cheaper than like juice and stuff. Like, and I'm like, you're right. I know you're right. So yeah.
This chapter pushes the reader to question whose stories and ideas are viewed as legitimate and worthy of engagement. Additionally, she explores how the factors that determine legitimacy rarely take into account Black women's lived experiences. That is chapter 11 of Black feminist thought. What do we miss? Also, we have a syllabus for that. We did that, and we have an author chat with Dr. Collins. Go watch that. Yeah. What do we miss by not taking Black women's stories seriously or as worthy of engagement?
A whole lot. Okay, we know a whole lot. But here's the thing: what I appreciated is that she was like, you know, we are knowledgeable and we are experts in our own experience, and sometimes when you are engaging with our experience, you can learn a lot. Like, so you're not going to master the code of the world, but you're going to learn something. And especially when we talk about something as like the mundanity of Black women's experience. So like we just talked about a little earlier in this chat about like, you know, it doesn't have to be something mind blowing, you know, spectacular, but just engaging with like our everyday experiences is enough. And you may get to something else. I mean, the whole thing about weave and globalism, like, you know, you may get there. I mean, or not. But the other thing I thought that was important was that she was talking about like, you have to still engage them to get to something else. Like in your, just like, if you're reading and you got to go through the newspaper, you have to pass through that person's like opinion before you get anywhere else. And that is like, that's a desire that she has. You're forced to look over it, even if it's just by getting to the next thing. And that's really important.
That Black women get to be read as part of the literary canon versus as simply, oh, that's only for Black women. And I mean, it's something that like Toni Morrison talks about like how we get othered. Yeah. And therefore, you know, it's like this idea that, you know, whiteness is a standard. And, you know.
I remember teaching women's studies and, you know, every time I would we read this book by Mia McKenzie, and every time I would read it, they would be like, I used to show an interview and she was talking about how like there are no white people in the story. And as soon as I felt like students got that, they would be like, well, I don't really connect to this story because there's no, like, I'm not a Black person. I'm like, but these are human experience. Like, have you ever been in love? Have you ever had
trying to relate to white people?
You know, like it's really hard. Like, you know, so especially if you're rich, you know, and what is there to compare? Like, I don't know that experience, but like, I remember just having to really like convince them, like, there are human themes of humanity in these texts that are not about them being Black at all.
Mm.
But I think that you get to engage in a Black experience. And there are some complexities to that you will see. So it's still a struggle.
All right, Black women do not have all the answers. We are not superheroes, and ours is not the definitive worldview. But we are trustworthy subjects of our own experiences and of ways of knowing. That's page 220. Quote.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know what we know about the institutions and shapes that shape our lives? How do we know what we know about the institutions that shape our lives? I'm clearly getting tired because I'm like having a hard time reading. Here we might consider religious, educational, political, or social institutions.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think she even points to like higher ed and just like a lot other institutions, but I think sometimes she really goes in and just even knowing like how she navigates her status as like an outsider and an insider all at the same time, and like how she goes, in and out of that. And not necessarily doesn't necessarily do it seamlessly, so but I think that just being able to reflect on the stories, like, and even just being able to like talk to your family members, like, and being like, wow, like, someone can have a theory. And I think we talked about this even when we talked about another chapter, where somebody can have an analysis of something about politics, and it's just be everyday talk. Like, the tiger knew he was a tiger, like, that part. And it's just like, wow, like that's that didn't take a whole lot of jargon, that didn't take all of that, but it really helped to, it really provided a perspective that was spot on. And that really helps us to understand, what happened 4 years ago, so, yeah.
how might considering our own experiences as worthy of engagement expand our own understanding of these structures? And how might your experiences sharpen how others view these institutions? I mean, I think this is like relates to how I've even gotten on YouTube and just, been very poignant about talking about like giving language to my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Because then what happens is so many are like, oh yeah, I like we go through so much life because we are so used to harm just casually trauma
Yeah.
casually trotting into our lives. We don't even name it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even stop and think, yo, like I really lived through that. Like I
Yeah.
did that.
Yep. I think about this a lot because my friend, if he ever sees this, it's not shade, but like he still talks about how traumatic grad school is. And for me, I don't even think about it like that. I'm just like, yeah, it happened like so. And I've disassociated. I don't even think about it like that. And when I think about how, like, what I experienced when he like has to remind me like what happened, I'm like, somebody should have been fired. Like the violent things that happened to me, like one time a faculty member asked me, like, we had this comprehensive exam and she was like, oh, Danisha, how did you do the exam with your children? And I was like, I don't have children. But like just this assumption that like, and I was like, I knew exactly what Black girl she was talking about. It was a Black girl who ended up not even being in our program. So that was weird. And it had been a year later. So I was like, you're confusing. If one, you're maybe confusing me with the other Black girl, or also you're just assuming I have children. Both are wrong and both are racist and sexist. So I was like,
That's like Black as fuck.
yeah, and it's like those types of microaggressions, and I just totally don't remember. And my friend has to remind me, like, girl, that happened. Do you remember? And I'm like, oh. And, telling those things, it's like people can relate to those and people can kind of think about like what their experiences are. And like you said, they can have language to say what happened to you was racist and sexist and homo, like all these different things. And so like, share your story, because I think a lot of the things I do, I'm like, oh, that wasn't anything, that didn't mean anything, everything. And it's like it did, and it will help someone else.
Mm. Y'all scare me because I start grad school August 23rd.
I'm sorry. You know,
And I was reading the Charlotte Observer today, and it was talking about, well, because I'm going to UNC Charlotte, and it was talking about how the Republicans have ruined. Well, I think it was talking about Chapel Hill, but it was how Republicans have ruined the system, the UNC system.
Oof. And I mean, girl, critical race theory. That's your whole beat, girl.
Well, it's not theory, it's history. I'm doing public history. I know.
Girl, in North Carolina, okay. But, it's a beautiful place.
I'm really more nervous about how this book club fitting to go, but
you just got to lean on the folks that you have hired to do the things that they are hired to do. And just,
July is going to be a very hectic month, I feel like. Lots of work, lots of things.
We got you.
All right. Are there any final thoughts? We have the last 3 minutes. What chapters revealed new experiences that others have encountered, but you haven't? Are there experiences or themes that you had hoped the author would have explored? Ooh.
Yeah, I came into this book having actually my students read this book and they were like, have you read this? And I was like, no, we're reading it in my book club. So I just kind of blindly. I think that this really felt like if she was writing this to be accessible to a general audience, I still felt like she was going deeper than just like, even what she talks about, that 101 like level, and doing it in a way that was still not beating us down. And letting us know like I'm right here with you. Still working these things out. So I was glad that we read this.
This is like my 4th time reading the book. It's just a book I keep revisiting. Like there's just, okay, there was this, I remember this quote, let me go reread it. It's just that easy of a read, and I love it.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely a fan.
I believe she's gonna come through.
Oh, you think it might happen in the future?
The universe will align.
Let's get like Sadia Hartman, Dr. Tressie. Let's fingers crossed. We can do it. I actually have to, for everything that we're reading, because we have our entire suite of books picked out through February of next year. So I need to start reaching out to folks. Disha.
I definitely want to. I hope that we can get Jananda Petrus, the one who I think we're reading her sometime. But I hope we can get her because I'm already reading it, and it's very funny.
Did I already assign the syllabus to you for that?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm already like, this is so good. Oh, I wish I could. I hope she.
Yeah, and then I think Morgan recommended a romance book.
Ooh.
For November. And so we're definitely going to get into, I'm absolutely excited for August and September.
Yeah.
September's going to be a breeze.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't going back to school, I would have tried to put together like an in-person event. Like a gospel brunch.
Oh, yeah.
It'd have been so much. I might still.
A big hat brunch.
I might be able to pull that off in Charlotte. But it's just all these things.
Put at Rudine's.
Rudine's don't exist no more. It's now, first of all, no. I live 2 blocks over from what is now Rudine's. I live off of Betty Ford, but it is now Uncle Nicky B's. And it's just a long, like a club. You just walk in and it's like the bar and then the kitchen. Okay. It's just a long, like, it's a weird strip mall. But that ain't nothing for, there's no crowd. There's no, and I feel like I had been there before for CIAA. And like there used to be like a back room or I don't know. Like I went there to get food the other day and it felt real familiar. I was like, I've never been there before.
Yeah.
But no, maybe we'll find something. We could be real tawdy and do it in Myers Park. No, we might do like or something. if we could do it in person. It's just like I have to like funding. It's always things like this are just always expensive.
Yeah.
You can have dreams and ambitions, but the cost of putting on an event is just so laborious. I don't know. But hey, y'all, if you shop Smart Brown Girl, okay.
Well, I have my shirt on today too. I got
Oh,
my
okay. Ida B. Wells, you gotta stand up. You so low. You gotta stand up and
I
lift.
know I always do this because I'm standing on a little. Let me push it down. I have a little stand here. But yeah, I have Ida today.
Okay, yes.
These are very educational because my dad always asks me, he's like, who you got on today? Because I have all three. I'm like, I got Ida B. Wells. And he's like, oh, okay, what did she do again? I'm like, she's the one who brought lynching, like exposed lynching.
Yes, the red record.
He's, like getting into the different people. So they're also very educational as well. And
Yes.
they're talking, they're conversation pieces.
Mine's is Octavia Butler, Audre Lorde, and Nina Simone. You know, if I was down to go out the house more and wear this shirt, people always stop. Like white people will be like, "Who's that on your shirt? Is that Toni Morrison?" I'm like, "No, close." So we're in.
You in the ballpark, but just keep going, keep trying.
You're in the row. But yes, get the Black Women Are Valuable shirt. It's super cute. I love it. Everyone last year got the sweatshirt and the t-shirt. Y'all got this sweatshirt.
Mm-hmm. Do you sell? Are you selling the sweatshirts as well, or just?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Both things that y'all got last year are on the website for sale.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Thank y'all for joining in. Thank y'all for kicking it with us. I'm gonna go do something crazy like workout.
Oof.
I'm trying to decide, do I do HIIT or do I do the Peloton? I'm trying to decide between what I'm gonna.
That Peloton app is good. I did a class with Adrian Williams this
I
morning.
have the bike. I hate it.
You don't like it? Give it to me. I'll switch out with you. I have a twin. I did not want to get a Peloton. I was like, I can't, that's an investment. But I
got that little YouTube grant. I was like, oh, I'm a bad bitch. And then I got a laptop and a Peloton. That's what I did for myself. And then all the money went to save. The rest of the money went to the business account and savings.
Nice. Well, just give it it's nice. Give it another. Do you have favorite instructors? Do you have instructors that you're?
There was a Silk Sonic ride that I really liked, but it was low-key kind of hard. But I realized I had to get the bike fitted because I wasn't sitting on the bike correctly. And so I actually got additional pieces that I need to swap out. But now we get into hey girl, hey talk. People like, girl.
No, like, are we done yet? We can end the stream. Okay. All righty.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.